just want to keep that job. Well, you know what? Joe will be a guy who leads with service and vision and integrity. He will put America first. He will advance the great successes of Donald Trump's agenda. Donald Trump has his back. I've got his back. You've got his back. Welcome to the next congressman from Washington, our good friend Joe Pitt.
We love you, Joe.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being the backbone of this movement that's taking back our state and taking back this nation. So I'm here because 23 years ago I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. I had the great honor of doing that in uniform. I had the opportunity to serve 11 combat deployments for this country. I'd go back and I'd do it all over again if I had to, because this country is the greatest country on the face of the earth. It was an absolute honor to serve this country, but right now the fight has come back home. We have seen in the last year and a half what has happened with this Chinese communist virus that has come here and given the tyrants in our ranks, the tyrants in both sides of the political establishment, Republicans and Democrats, all the leverage that they wanted to hold over us to shut down our ability to go to church, to go to school, to run our businesses. And then they've taken it and they've been able to weaponize it against the way that we make a living. They've been able to prosecute the largest transfer of wealth in our history, from small business owners all the way to these rich corporations that haven't missed one paycheck or one day of work. This is something that the far left and the corporate right has wanted for a very long time, but they were able to accelerate because of these COVID lockdowns. Donald Trump was a massive glitch in the system. He was never supposed to happen. The establishment feared him. He punched through and he started to make working class wages rise. He started to have our endless wars draw down. That's what got me to this point right now. Like I said, I had the opportunity to deploy to combat for this country. I saw the way that our establishment, Republican and Democrat, just wanted to keep us in a state of perpetual war. The military-industrial complex is a very real thing. Look no further than what's going on in Afghanistan right now. The establishment, the military-industrial complex, did everything they could to keep that conflict going. They will do everything they can to get us back into that conflict. Why? Because it is a major driver of income for them, for our permanent ruling class. They are the ones that benefit from these wars. They also benefit from the way they structured the economy. Decades ago, when they shipped all of our jobs overseas, all of our good manufacturing jobs, that was folks, by and large, on the right, the free market types that said, hey, whatever the free market did, we just had to go with it, because if you interfere in the economy, you're some kind of a socialist. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we had our natural resources industry completely and totally gutted on the altar of environmentalism. Right. Who ultimately benefited from that? Again, the permanent ruling class on Wall Street. Working class jobs went down. They pretty much dried up, and we told a whole generation of Americans that you had to take a bunch of student debt to get one of these new tech jobs. You had to move out of your town because that town was dying. It was a timber town. Those jobs are never coming back. Obama used to say that all the time. Those jobs are gone. It's a thing of the past, like it was a force of nature. But it was really just politicians that did that. So they said, hey, you have to go and you have to take all this student loan debt. At the end of the student loan debt, were there great jobs waiting for people? No, there was a bunch of jobs in the gig economy because the whole system was rigged. Rigged so that you would be saddled with debt. You couldn't settle down, have one parent work, one parent stay at home with your kids. Instead, we're locked into this cycle of being perpetual renters, perpetually in the gig economy, perpetually in debt, essentially perpetually serfs. And who does that benefit? Republicans and Democrats at the top levels and their corporate donor class. And that's who's been able to accelerate with this COVID lockdown and the way the wealth has been transferred with the COVID. We all know that. We see that. We see how COVID was also weaponized to send out massive unsolicited mail-out ballots to steal the election of 2020 because they could not allow Donald Trump to happen again. They had to cheat. They had to steal it. So what we have to do, we all know that's happening right now, and we're all mobilizing. We're showing up at rallies like this. We're showing up at rallies in front of the school boards. We're telling tyrants like Jay Inslee, you're not going to put masks on our kids. You're not going to make anyone take a vaccine. You're not going to make me show my papers like this is some communist country. We all know that. So when we come out in such force, peacefully and patriotically in 22, and we take the House back and we take the Senate back, we, the America First movement, led by leaders like the great Matt Gaetz, we are going to hit with a wall of legislation that comes against the Democrats and against the establishment. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to adjudicate the election of 2020. We are not going to let them get away with the steal. Right now, we have the receipts, we have the data. People like Matt Brainerd were out there fighting for it to bring forth all the actual evidence of election fraud. We're seeing it also come out now with all these great audits that are going on in Maricopa County and throughout the country. Georgia's next, Pennsylvania's next. The one thing we've lacked, because once again, our institutions are full of self-centered cowards, is a format to adjudicate the election. We will provide that format in Congress. We will lay out all the evidence of fraud. We will show the American people that there was widespread fraud. And then if Joe Biden is still in office, we will impeach him and we will impeach Kamala Harris. From there, the main effort, and this is what we do in the military, we identify a main effort. The main effort that we will work on strengthening is the one thing the left doesn't have control of. They have control of all three branches of the government. Here in Washington State, we're under Jay Inslee. They have tech, they have the media. All the guns are pointed against us, right? But the one thing they don't have is the one thing they're going after, and that's the American family. They've been chipping away at the American family now for decades with their slow march through all of our institutions. But what we're going to do is we're going to give the American family the ability to have a gun in the fight and to start hitting back. We do that with school choice and the school voucher program. Our children have been absolutely held hostage by this predatory education system, and especially by these teachers' unions. Right now, if every time a parent pulled their kids out of school, these schools would be completely and totally bankrupt. We can show up, and we must show up at these school board meetings, but these bureaucrats can essentially just look at us and laugh because they're still getting their paychecks. There's no direct correlation between kids getting pulled out of school right now and the teachers and the teachers' unions and all these bureaucrats getting their paychecks. The school choice, the school voucher program ends that. If you pull your kids out of school, that money should follow you. You can opt out of that system if you want. I understand there's some people that don't want anything to do with that, but that right there empowers the parents. The next thing that we need to do is we need to create the system that allows one parent to stay home with their kids. The American dream is not two parents working 8-hour days and your children being raised by daycare or some teachers. We do that in two ways. If you have skin in the game in the economy and you have one parent that's working full time, you should be eligible for a child tax credit deduction. Tax deduction. This is not a welfare program, but this is just allowing you to write off your the daycare expense for your children. That gives you the ability to have one parent stay home. I think $10,000 per child is a great tax deduction that you should have the access to. That essentially allows one parent to stay there. It alleviates the need for these daycare systems. After that, we must break up big tech. The big tech oligarchs right now are absolutely poisoning the minds of our political discourse, poisoning the minds of our youth, and they're also going to be used. The big tech will be the vehicle for the COVID vaccine passports. The COVID vaccine is all about control. The government wants full and total control, and they want to know who doesn't submit. That's why they're telling everyone in their places of business, they're telling them at schools, they have to get the COVID vaccine, because then you have a very critical set of data. You know who submitted and who didn't submit. At that point, your political ideology doesn't matter. You've told the government whether you will or whether you won't. So the government is going to use their relationship with big tech. Joe Biden brags about it all the time. Jen Psaki brags about it all the time, how they're working with Facebook, they're working with Google to root out disinformation, to root out insurrectionists, all that type of stuff. So before we know it, we are going to have big tech putting digital vaccine passports into all of our cellular devices. There's already a test market for that going on right now in the European Union. Bill Gates has talked about this at length for years. We have to use the power of government to go and break up these big tech monopolies. This is something that Republicans, absolutely. I don't even want to talk about Section 230. We just need to break up big tech. They need to be a public utility. They need to be seized. They need to be broken up. This is a monopoly. For far too long, Republicans have been very cautious about using the power of government against private industry, and I understand why. That does make sense to a certain degree. But when that private industry is being used against the citizenry of this country, we actually have to have the government step in and do what's right for the American people. The economy is the next place we need to hit, and hit hard. Right now, our entire economy runs on debt. We don't produce anything anymore as a country because, like I said, we ship the vast majority of our manufacturing jobs overseas or killed off entire industries like the timber industry. That helped create that environment that makes a family reliant on two incomes. We need to aggressively re-onshore all of our manufacturing. There's no reason why we should be reliant on the Chinese Communist Party, our #1 geostrategic foe, hosting all of our supply lines. We saw how that worked out with the COVID crisis. They were able to basically dictate their terms because we were reliant on them. We're also reliant on them to buy up our debt bonds. So it's a very broken system. If China stops buying off our debt bonds, they can essentially crash our economy without firing a shot. So we have to re-onshore to strengthen not just our jobs, not just our families, but also the U.S. dollar. It is a political issue, it's an economic issue, it's a national security issue, it's a moral issue. We owe it to our people to give them the ability to leave high school, enter a well-paying job that gives you the ability to support a family. We are a sovereign nation that cares deeply about our people and not just an economy. We have to pound that through the corporate infrastructure of both the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. From there, we must secure our border. We must finish the wall. I went down to the border wall in Yuma, Arizona. A couple weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go down to the border wall in Yuma, Arizona with the great Representative Paul Gosar. He took me to the spot where we stopped building the wall because Republicans like Jaime, Herrera, Beutler crossed the aisle and voted with the Democrats. So it's stunning to see, because really on one side, you can stand there, there's a big beautiful wall that people can't get through, but then there's a point where it stops and you can walk around it from Mexico right into America. And we're watching, it's August, it's 120 degrees out in Arizona, we're watching illegal immigrants walk through in the middle of the day, but what's even worse is he took me about another half mile down to the east, and there's places where massive sections of this wall are just laying flat in the desert. That's because when they stopped building the wall because of Jaime Herrera Beutler, we still paid for it.
Of course.
It just didn't get finished. They just didn't put it up. So we still paid for it, and I'm watching these illegal immigrants walk around it and walk over it to come into America. That's an issue that affects not just our security. The cartels are controlling that flow right there. There's a direct correlation in how many drug crimes we've had in this district, to include tragically losing a police officer who was defending all of us from narcotics crime. He was killed in the line of duty. There's a direct correlation between policymakers making decisions like Jaime Herrera Beutler and policymakers deciding that we don't need the wall there anymore, and that officer losing his life. So what we have to do is we have to finish the wall, put the military down there, reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy, offensively use our foreign aid. Tell these countries in South America, if you want one more penny from the U.S., control your own borders and stop the flow of illegal immigration.
That's right.
Like I said, it's a security issue, but it's also an economic issue. The only reason the Democrats say that they're pro-open borders and they're corporate masters, essentially, let them do it, is so they can virtue signal about how they want to give Americans $15, $20 minimum wages, because they know they're never going to pay it. They're going to hire illegal immigrants. It's the same thing in the tech sector. It's the same thing with a lot of our high-skilled jobs with these H-1B visas. Legal immigration, a lot of the establishment Republicans like to say, hey, I want to build the wall and I want to be tough down there, but I love legal immigration. What that has done is that has undercut the labor of people who actually went and got a decent skilled job in the university. They're probably saddled with a bunch of student loan debt, and now the job that they were supposed to get in the tech sector, it's been taken by legal immigration. It's because those legal immigrants from India and Pakistan primarily, they'll work something to 3 to 1 compared to an American, and thanks to Obamacare, an American has to be provided with health care. So that's another major issue right there, preventing U.S. labor. The final thing that we must do is continue to end our wars overseas and get our troops out of these vulnerable situations right now. What we're seeing in Afghanistan is 20 plus years of lies just come shredding down. We saw this in Iraq in 2014. We were told that the Iraqi army and the Iraqi government, despite the whole war being started on lies, the one good thing that we had done was built a great Iraqi military and a great Iraqi government. It's too bad it almost cost us 5,000 dead Americans and $2 trillion. That was all, we were told that was all worth it by the Bushes and by the Obamas. Well, a couple years later, ISIS crosses the berm, the Iraqi military throws down their weapons. The next thing you know, we have to go back in, bomb all of our old equipment that the Iraqi army threw down on the ground for ISIS to take, and then rebuild that country. We're still deeply indebted there. We're still in a very bad strategic position there because Iran controls Iraq and the Iraqi government, and we're seeing this play out now in Afghanistan. We were told that the Afghan government was going to hold, that it was worthy of nearly 20 years of U.S. blood and treasure, nearly 2,500 dead Americans. We were told that that was all worth it and it was going to hold. The military-industrial complex had no desire and no will, and they never planned on actually leaving. You can tell that by the way that this withdrawal went. They lied to Joe Biden's face just like they lied to every other president. President Trump had negotiated a peace deal with the Taliban that got us over a year of peace where no American was killed due to hostile fire. Trump did that because he crushed the Islamic Caliphate in Iraq and Syria with overwhelming force, and when our embassy in Iraq was attacked, he killed Qasem Soleimani and Abu Mahdi Mohandes, two of the biggest terrorists in the region. He took them off the battlefield. So when Trump sat down with the Taliban, there's only one thing these guys respect, and that's force. I'm sorry, the world's not a nice place outside of our borders. When he sat down with the Taliban, he said, listen, if you guys double-cross me, I will kill you first. I know exactly where you live. And the Taliban knew that Trump meant business because they had just seen what he did. That right there bought us over a year of peace. We would have had our troops out last summer. I want everyone to remember that was part of the deal. However, we were told by leaks from the intelligence community, by leaks from the military-industrial complex, that there was a system of Russian bounties being put on the heads of our troops. And somehow, if Trump were to pull our troops out of the Middle East, that would be somehow beneficial to Vladimir Putin, and that tied in with the Russian collusion lies that they were telling at the time. So therefore, representatives like Jaime Herrera Beutler, Liz Cheney, they put forth legislation that took away funds for any kind of withdrawal. Our troops remained in place because of feckless Republicans going along with this narrative to appease Democrats, to appease the mainstream media, and to take pop shots at Donald Trump, because Donald Trump was poking holes in their horrible nation-building neoconservative ideas. That's why our troops remain there. Trump extended the deal. He didn't have to do this. He bought us another couple months to May of 21. That's when our troops were supposed to be out. Biden comes in on the stolen election in January. All he had to do was get our troops out by May, and none of them, the 13 that we lost so tragically, and the many more that are in serious condition in Walter Reed, they'd all be alive and with their families right now had he pulled out and stuck with Trump's deal. But he couldn't do that because that would have vindicated President Trump's foreign policy. So what he said to the military was, hey guys, buy me enough time until September 11th, then I can be the one that has this victory speech that I ended these 20-year wars. The military looked at him and they lied to him. And they said, yes, sir, the Afghan military will hold, because the military has been lying for 20 years. All they do is get presidents to buy off on a 6-month more extension, 18-month more extension, one more tour to, turn the corner, or whatever the phrase was. That's what they thought they got Biden on. So they made no preparations whatsoever to leave, and that's completely evident. Joe Biden doesn't care about anything on the ground. His political machine only wants the optics. So they said, hey, don't even worry about it, pull everybody out right now. We don't care how horrible this is going to be, just get people out. And the one thing we want planned well is we want massive amounts of Afghans on those airplanes flying out here back to America. That can be the second front of our wave of illegal immigrants so we can translate into Democrat voters. Don't believe me? Look at the stats. Exactly. Don't believe me? Look at the stats. We pulled out somewhere between 90 and 109,000 Afghans. The vast majority of them are not SIV holders. They're not special immigrants. We were told these were the Afghans that fought alongside us. Now look, this is near and dear to my heart. When we were getting out of Iraq, I helped some of our Iraqi partners get out because they earned their way to this country by fighting for us. We were told that that's who we were bringing into the gates. We were told that's why those Marines were waiting out, throwing out every single safety procedure that we have. Safety procedures that we've learned through 20 years of hard combat. That was all thrown to the wind because the message from the top was we have to get massive amounts of unvetted Afghans into these airplanes for the sake of optics. That's all Biden cared about. That's what they did. That's what tragically pushed those 13 Marines out into the crowd that day. It's that top-level, political-driven decision that cost those brave men and women their lives. I am sick and tired of our elites, our permanent ruling class, the military-industrial complex, making decisions that cost people their lives, that cost Americans their livelihoods, and victimize us every single day for their gain, their political gain, their financial gain. That's why I'm in this fight. We can see the establishment right now. They are cornered and they are bleeding out. They can see all the evidence of all the fraud in the election of 2020. They can see the COVID narrative being shredded. They tried to tell us that if we questioned the election on January 6th, we are insurrectionists, and there was this massive insurrection on January 6th. Those lies are coming shredding down one by one by one. Pretty much everything they've said has been a lie. And now they're holding political prisoners. So right now, they're cornered and they're bleeding out, but they are very dangerous when they're cornered and they're bleeding out. That's why we have to continue to peacefully and patriotically come out. Let everyone you know in your social circle, in your family circle, that we are the majority of the country. We have the momentum. We just need to be steady. We need to mobilize. We need to register people to vote, and we need to get out there with as much peaceful force as we can. We are the wave of the future. It's really not even about Republican and Democrat anymore. It's about one side that wants complete and total control of your life for the benefit of the elite, for the benefit of this new world order ran by technocrats and oligarchs. And it's the rest of us that want to live in the America that we grew up in, the America that was bequeathed to us by our founders, and the America that we want to pass on to our children and our grandchildren. I can't thank you all enough for being out here today. God bless you. God bless America. America first.